Shalom Mishpaka family. In our last video, we broke down the literal biological and electromagnetic physics of our creation. We established that our biology, specifically our eumelanin, functions as an advanced semiconductor template designed to process the high-frequency spirit of the true source YAHUAH. But look family, I'm going to be real with you right now. I want to keep this completely 100 with you. Delivering this information isn't easy, and it's something I've had to wrestle with deeply as a fellow Yashraeli, walking in the truth, striving every day to do right by our Father. When I first read through the scriptures, like probably many of you, I noticed things that didn't quite sit right with me. Well, more particularly, didn't sit right with my spirit. I would come across instances of wrath, jealousy, and vengefulness, and even though a quiet voice inside me questioned it, I just brushed it past. I told myself, even if I don't understand it, everything the Father does is good, and I chose to just stay obedient, keep studying, keep the ways. Look, I'm not saying we stop keeping the commandments or observing the feast days, of course not. But I am reaching out to those of you who notice those same disparities. I want you to know that those questions weren't a fragment of your imagination, and you weren't being disobedient for noticing them. Your Ruach was simply registering an energetic contradiction. Today, we are tracing exactly how that confusion was structurally hidden. So let me start off by giving you a direct example of what I mean. On one hand, we read pages upon pages of instructions demanding animal blood sacrifices, but then we read the words of the prophets where the frequency completely shifts. Look at Jeremiah chapter 7 verse 22, where the Father explicitly says, "For I did not speak to your fathers or command them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, about matters of burnt offerings or slaughterings." Let's look at David, crying out in Psalms 51 verse 16 to 17. "For you do not desire slaughtering, or I would give it. You do not delight in burnt offering. The slaughterings of Elohim are a broken spirit, a heart broken and crushed, O Elohim, these you do not despise." So how do we reconcile this? Here is the key we have to understand. The original Hebrew writings, the term used was Elohim or Elohim in the original tongue. Elohim or Elohim was a structural blanket title used for anyone in a position of authority. It applied to human kings, judges, territorial rulers, other deities, and it also applied to the true source YAHUAH. But during the translation process, the Imperial scribes took advantage of this. They decided which parts of the text they would attribute to the true source YAHUAH. By dropping generic titles like Lord and God wherever they chose, they controlled the narrative and the context. Actions in scripture that actually belonged to a corrupt human king, a harsh judge, or a lower deity were deliberately re-signed as YAHUAH, painting the true Father with the low-frequency traits of material rulers. To see how this engine of manipulation was built, we have to look at the raw history anchoring ourselves to the earthly timeline of our Messiah Yahushua as a guide. The mainstream religious matrix tells us that roughly 300 years before the Messiah walked the earth, between 285 and 246 BCE, a Greek Pharaoh in Alexandria, Egypt, named Ptolemy II Philadelphus, commissioned a translation of the Hebrew Torah into Koine Greek. This project is famously known as the Septuagint. The history record, known as the Letter of Aristeas, If you can look it up, it's very easy to find. It claims that the high priest in Jerusalem selected exactly 6 elite scribes from each of the 12 tribes of Yasharel. 72 scribes in total. That's why it's called the Septuagint. Septuagint means 70. To do the work. But when you look at actual scriptural history, this neat little story completely falls apart. It's simply a historical impossibility. Centuries before the Greek translation project was ever a thought, the nation of Yasharel was violently split into 2 separate kingdoms. If you go back to 1 Kings chapter 11 and 12 and read the final diagnostic report in 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 6 and 18, the records show that the Assyrian Empire completely crushed the northern kingdom. The 10 northern tribes all the way back in 722 BCE. That is over 400 years before the Septuagint. They were carried away into captivity by the Assyrians. 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 18 explicitly states there was none left but the tribe of YAHUAH only. By the time Ptolemy II wanted this translation, there was no organized directory of the 10 northern tribes sitting in Jerusalem to pull scribes from. The 12 tribes narrative was a political cover story used to give an imperial Greek translation universal divine authority. The project wasn't handled by an uncompromised priesthood. It was executed by heavily Hellenized, Greek-educated Judean elites, working under the direct payroll and ideological influence of a Greek empire. Swimming in Greek philosophy, these scribes systematically flattened the text. They erased the sacred name YAHUAH, replaced it with the generic Greek word Kyrios, or Lord. They took the wide multi-use title Elohim or Elohim and compressed it all into the broad Greek word Theos or God, carefully choosing where to place those titles to fit their master's theological goals. This was the first great crime against the text, neutralizing the script. Right, so we're going to take a pause here, because I want you to give your spirit time to breathe and digest all of this. I know this is a lot to process, Yasharel. Believe me, it took me a while, like I said at the beginning of this reel. But ultimately, we need to realize and remember that all our scripts and sacred writings were in the hands of the heathens for centuries. I know that there are some of us that hold some scripts in higher regard over other scripts. For instance, we have a small number that seem to think that the Brit Hadasha, or the New Testament, is the only corruptible or corrupted book, not realizing that, like I just said, all our scripts were in the hands of the heathen. And even this first part of the reel has demonstrated how that was. What I would like you to do, Mishpaka, is to go and read 1 Kings 11, 12 and 2 Kings 17. Fact check these timelines for yourself. Scripture tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 21, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Do the homework, family, and when you're ready, join me for part 2, where we expose the physical takeover of the temple priesthood and the positions of authority. Until then, Mishpaka, stay Baruch.